Have you ever wondered how Russia's economy is doing now? In 2021, Russia produced 10.5 million barrels of rough and condensate each day, representing 14% of worldwide creation. Yet, did you understand that Russia's dependence on oil and gas trades has risked its economy and security? The country's reluctance to differentiate its economy and explore other energy sources has prompted its ongoing quandary, as seen by oil cost instability and international struggles. We'll take a gander at Russia's energy emergency and what it's meaning for its economy and international strategy, particularly the ongoing clash with Ukraine, in this video. Thus, assuming that you're keen on the eventual fate of Russia's economy and its suggestions for the worldwide energy market, watch until the end. Yuri Gagarin, a Soviet Air Force pilot, became the first human to travel into space in 1961. The Soviet Union achieved this milestone, but it collapsed in 1991 after military leaders and the secret police took control of the government, and Vice President Gennady Yanayev assumed the presidency. Amidst this situation, the military announced a curfew in Moscow through a news broadcast called Abramia, with a large number of people gathering outside. The current status of Russia is a consequence of an oil and gas emergency that has been growing into a monetary and international strategy emergency. The European Council president tweeted about this crisis earlier this year. Russia's previous energy dominance inherited from the Soviet Union has caused the country to face several challenges. This crisis has led to a decline in the oil and energy fields, resulting in an economic downturn and foreign policy complications. The impact of this crisis on Russia's state is significant, and understanding it is vital. Russia has often been compared to an oil company with a CEO president, with many experts highlighting its heavy reliance on oil and gas to maintain global dominance. Russian President Putin has insinuated the country is an overall energy superpower, which isn't without merit given that it is one of the world's main three unrefined creators, close by Saudi Arabia and the US. In 2021, Russia created 10.5 million barrels of rough and condensate each day, addressing 14% of the world's all-out supply. Russia is also the world's second greatest maker of flammable gas, with the biggest gas held internationally, and is the world's biggest gas exporter. The European Association intensely relies upon Russian gas, with 45% of its imports and generally 40% of its utilization coming from Russia. Be that as it may, Russia's weighty reliance on non-renewable energy source trades has prompted monetary issues, as the nation has not enhanced its economy as Saudi Arabia has. Thus, variances in oil costs or loss of a piece of the pie can endanger Russia's gross domestic product and homegrown spending. In essence, hydrocarbons play a central role in contemporary Russia, constituting a significant portion of the country's export earnings and budget revenues. Based on a graphical representation shown by Statista, the oil and gas sector's contribution to Russia's GDP varies between 15% and 25% from Q1 2017 to Q2 2022. Most of these resources are exported to Europe, indicating Europe's dependence on Russian supply and Russia's reliance on European income. Russia's dependence on this sector makes it vulnerable to collapse, as it constitutes 60% of the country's exports and 45% of its budget, as previously noted. Relying heavily on the energy sector can have consequences, as exemplified by the Soviet Union's experience with volatile oil prices. Countries such as the US and Saudi Arabia, despite being high producers, encounter comparable obstacles in the energy sector. Nevertheless, owing to their varied economies, they may be more versatile in responding to market shifts. Conversely, Russia's extensive dependence on oil income has presented noteworthy hindrances to its long-range objectives and fiscal stability. Additionally, the scarcity of inventiveness has played a part in the present oil and gas predicament in Russia. Despite earning substantial revenue in the early 2000s, inadequate motivation to explore new fields has resulted in the continued use of outdated extraction techniques from the Soviet era. Furthermore, the majority of newly discovered oil reserves in Russia are unconventional and require advanced technologies and significant capital investment for extraction. Compared to other nations, the progress of Russian oil production systems has been sluggish. Although this situation is not always catastrophic, as many countries with vast resources are unable to exploit them, Russia faces unique challenges due to its high tax rate, disorganized regulatory system, and official suspicion of foreign companies, particularly those from the West. Collaborative partnerships with foreign oil companies are difficult to establish, limiting Russia's ability to exploit its Siberian fields and generate greater output and revenue. It is also essential to recognize that the energy sector heavily depends on good foreign policy and international relations to foster better trade relations. However, Russia's situation in this regard has been murky at best. For instance, Russia's 2014 annexation of Crimea led to U.S. sanctions, which severely impacted the country's oil reserves. Additionally, the European Union's push towards green energy has eroded Russia's advantage in the market. With the world moving towards clean energy, having vast hydrocarbon resources may not be as useful. The shortage of energy in Russia is becoming more serious because of the fighting happening in Ukraine. President Putin conducted military drills in Ukraine, which caused many problems, such as forcing people to leave their homes and causing a lot of damage to essential things like power and water supplies. This has brought about a great deal of chaos and damage to individuals living nearby. To acquire a far-reaching comprehension of the events that occurred in Ukraine, it's significant to recognize that they weren't isolated occurrences. Numerous factors contributed to the situation, including both political and economic influences, particularly related to the oil and gas sectors of Ukraine and Russia. The infrastructure and pipelines owned by Ukraine are critical for transporting Russia's oil and gas to European countries, making these resources very valuable and a major factor in what happened in Ukraine. The reliance on Ukraine's gas center has made grading between the two nations, particularly when there have been conflicts over the expenses that Ukraine ought to get for permitting the gas to go through their area. Putin's regime has consistently been opposed to Ukraine's strategic role in managing the gas hub in Europe, and disputes over prices have been geopolitical. Notably, Russia has initiated disputes with Ukraine during times of economic hardship, such as in 2006, 2009, and 2014, likely to divert public attention from problems with its own oil-based economy. Putin's actions during these disputes have been extreme, such as cutting off gas supplies, causing low pressure in the system, and leaving millions of people without heat in 7 European states. In 2014, when Putin's military annexed Crimea, the West responded by putting sanctions on Russia. This hurt Russia's economy, particularly in the energy sector. Many Western companies stopped investing in Russia, and the country's access to foreign technology and equipment became limited. The conflict in Ukraine has made it hard for Europe to reduce its dependence on Russian gas, and this has impacted its energy security. The Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline has been a contentious issue because it directly connects Russia to Germany. Some people are concerned that this pipeline will increase Europe's dependence on Russian gas, giving Russia excessive control over its energy supply. The significant dependence of Russia on oil and gas has exposed it to market volatility, as illustrated by the Ukraine conflict, which underscores the risks of excessive reliance on a singular industry. To avoid the fate of the Soviet Union, Russia needs to embrace the impressive and urgent undertaking of enhancing its economy and lessening its reliance on oil and gas, which is fundamental for its worldwide financial stand. The European Union has implemented new climate regulations that have caused dissatisfaction from Moscow due to the inclusion of green initiatives that would limit payments and imports from Russia in favor of clean energy sources. These measures could adversely affect Russian exports of aluminum and steel and jeopardize Europe's significant role as a customer. As hydrocarbons make up 45% of Russia's budget, it is conceivable that these improvements added to Russia's aggression in Ukraine, further fueling tensions between Russia and the EU. Subsequently, the EU has imposed hefty sanctions on Russia, and part states are now planning to deliberately eliminate the use of Russian oil and gas. As a result, Russia's revenue is expected to decline significantly, and it may have to rely solely on Asian markets. While Europe has also been impacted by Russian pushback, Russia is also facing serious economic consequences. Putin's capacity to increase oil prices is limited by a cap of $60 per barrel settled upon by the U.S. and its European partners. This cap aims to restrict Russian revenues while also promoting global oil supply and preventing windfall profits that could finance the conflict in Ukraine. Russia's reliance on oil and gas exports has jeopardized its economy and stability. The country's unwillingness to diversify its economy and investigate other energy sources has led to its current dilemma, as seen by oil price volatility and geopolitical conflicts. Moreover, the contention in Ukraine has featured the risk of overdependence on a solitary industry, as well as the significance of good global relations in the energy area. To keep up with long-term economic stability, Russia should set out on the troublesome course of broadening its economy and diminishing its dependence on oil and gas.